I first read Subtle Art in 2019, and it had a significant impact on me in the way that I kind of saw my life and where I wanted to grow. And then just listening back yesterday to your shitty values chapter, I was, oh gosh, what was I feeling? I think I had mixed feelings of embarrassment and not pity, but just shaking my head at, gosh, how was I not aware of some of these things in my 20s?
Yeah.
And not to wallow in it, but I think there is a part of me that looks back on previous behavior, and I think people can probably relate to this, where there is a sense of embarrassment,
Right.
and that's probably me thinking that I need to be perfect. Right. But I look back in my 20s and I look at the kind of, what was I doing with my life? I was the stereotypical young dude in his 20s who was chasing success without really thinking about what is success. And if you had said to me, what are your values? Firstly, I would not have had a quick answer to that.
Right.
Because honestly, I never stopped to think about it. And then if you had pressed me, I probably would have said things like honesty and integrity and authenticity.
Which your behaviors probably would have belied.
And that's where I was shaking my head, because
Yeah.
my behaviors, if I am just being completely candid, suggests that really what I was valuing was pleasure. I was in that kind of trap of success is materialistic things, buying property, right? Everyone celebrates that.
Right.
Get the car, people celebrate that. He's doing really well. Get the girl.
Yeah, of course.
What do you need to do to get the girl? Get out, drink, socialize. I was the eternal optimist to the point where you couldn't rattle me. I'm always going to be positive.
Yeah.
And I was like, no doubt, very difficult to be in relationship with. I was always right. And so I bet you can predict what results I got.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I had lots of things around me, but life felt a little or very hollow.
Yeah.
And so what I thought could be really instructive here is just sitting on this idea of shitty values. Like, why is it that sometimes those shitty values are so alluring and hard to see in the moment?
Yeah.
And often it's with distance and with time and maturity that you can look back and say, okay, those values were not the values that I really want, and reorient our lives. But for the 20-year-old who's listening right now, and me, because there's things that I'm doing today that I'm not aware of, no doubt.
Of course.
Like, how do we do an audit and kind of identify those shitty values that are affecting our behavior?
Right. Well, there's a few strings to pull out here. I think first it's probably useful to define like what is a shitty value and what is a good value. I believe in my book, it's been a long time now, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but I believe in my book, I argue that strong values are things that are within your control, are perpetual, and are not contingent on the outside world, right? So honesty is a good value because you are always in control of whether you're honest or not. You never reach an endpoint with honesty. Like, no matter how honest you are today, you still got to wake up and be honest tomorrow. Like, it is perpetual in that sense. And it is not contingent on anything in the outside world. Like, the world could blow up tomorrow. You still got to get up and be honest. And so that's an example of a good value. A bad value is, say, I don't know, sleeping with a lot of women or buying a fancy car or whatever. That's something that's not completely within your control. It is something that there is a endpoint, right? So it's like, how nice of a car, when you do get that nice car, now what? There's like this empty void where that the nice car used to be in terms of like what you value or prioritize in your life. And then obviously it's very contingent on like outside circumstances. So it's not self-contained. And so with that definition, it's funny listening. First of all, I relate a lot to your story. I was very similar when I was in my 20s. Right. And I went through a period where I had quite a bit of embarrassment, shame, a little bit of regret around a lot of previous behavior. I've come to the conclusion that a certain amount of that is normal and healthy. Happy to talk about that more in a second. But there are a few things that you mentioned. You asked, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to A, know what you actually value, and then B, actually live up to it? And I think one of the things that you brought up, I think, is time. There is a certain perspective that I don't think you can get any other way than just lived experience. When you're 24 or 23, you have not lived long enough to watch enough things you care about fail you.
Right. And I thought about that. I'm like, if Mark had sat me down when I was 23 and walked me through this, I probably would have said, yeah, right.
Yeah, whatever, dude. Totally. Me too, by the way. Like, absolutely. I wouldn't have listened to anybody. I think I think what a lot of times what we call wisdom is living long enough to see yourself make enough bad decisions. So I think time is one element of it. I think another element of it is simply we're very good at lying to ourselves. And this is the tricky thing with values is that, and it's funny because psychologists, the researchers run into this when they try to study values as well. Is if you the standard way to study values in people is to lay out a self-report survey in front of people and have them, answer 50 questions or whatever it is about like, how much do you care about this? How much do you care about that? And what people consistently find is that if you ask people like, how much do you care about honesty? They will say it's 10 out of 10, super important to me. And then 30 seconds later, they will turn around and lie to somebody. Like it's just
right. What you report is not necessarily what you embody or live.
Exactly. And we're often very delusional about our own actions and behaviors, right? So another thing that they consistently find is that if you ask people how often they lie, they like vastly underestimate how often they lie. Like all of us lie very frequently. Most of it's like small white lies, but it's just part of being human. And most of us are very ignorant or naive to our own behaviors and what we actually how we actually show up in the world. So I think a big part of it too is that dishonesty with yourself of like, okay, I say this is what I care about, but every morning I'm waking up and all I'm thinking about is money. And every night all I'm thinking about is where's the party? Where are the girls? And it's so like clearly something's not lining up somewhere, right? And again, I think there's a certain amount of I think there's a skill that needs to be developed of maybe distrusting yourself a little bit. Most people in the self-help world say trust yourself, trust your intuition. I've read too much psych research. I take the opposite tack. Say don't trust your intuition. Your intuition is probably very self-serving and
right.
self-absorbed. And so question your assumptions about what you actually care about.
So if you're not trusting your intuition, then you're saying just double click on things and pause a little bit more?
Yes. I think, let me clarify. I think people often conflate, say, trusting your intuition when maybe there's an important decision to be made. It's like, should I spend the money to buy that house, or is it really going to make me happy to move to New York, or like whatever, And I think in those cases, learning to listen to your intuition and your gut is probably important. When it comes to what you think about yourself, what type of person am I? What do I like? What do I believe in? I think we should be a little bit more skeptical of ourselves, because it is human nature that we believe the flattering sales pitch about ourselves.
Right. Is that where I have to imagine, and I mean, I've lived this, where it helps to have people in your life
That will call you out.
that are willing to
Yeah.
be like, "Hey, Mark, I love you so much. I'm like you're holding you high."
Yeah.
There are behaviors that to me are not stacking up with like the way you're saying you want to live or what your value set are, and I'm going to risk our friendship to tell you that. Because we don't live in a society necessarily
Yeah.
where I think that, well, actually, even if we step back again, if I myself am not living true to my values, I probably won't call you out on yours.
Well, you just took my answer out of my mouth. First of all, the person you just described, like that is the most valuable friendship you can have in your life. If you have anybody in your life who will actually say that to you, like keep them very close. Second of all, you're 100% right, because generally speaking, the more we lie to ourselves, the more we tend to surround ourselves with people who lie to themselves as well. And so and you end up in a situation where you don't really want to, like, let's say you see a friend who is kind of full of it. Your courage to call them out on that is probably going to be proportional to your courage to call yourself out on your own bullshit. So if you're hiding from your own stuff, you don't want to go there. You want to just keep the party going. But if you've developed a habit and a skill of calling yourself out and noticing when you become misaligned, you're probably going to have a lot more courage and willingness to call other people out. It's okay to feel bad sometimes. You're going to feel bad. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to like waste a part of your 20s. What's the saying? Youth is wasted on the young, right? Like, it's the cliches exist for a reason, but it's just hard to remember that. Like, it's so instinctive for us that when we're in pain to just be like, how do I get rid of this pain?
Have you guys ever tried creatine gummies? I have. And in fact, for a while there between you and I, they were a secret vice of mine. Damn, they tasted good. Problem was, like many creatine gummy brands, while they taste good, they contain very little, if any, creatine at all. A lot of brands that have been selling these creatine gummies over the years have been knowingly or unknowingly duping us. So I've been waiting for a brand to bring out creatine chews that are actually legit. And Momentous stepped up to the plate big time. The all new Momentous creatine chews deliver exactly 1 gram of CreaPure creatine monohydrate, which is the gold standard form, single sourced from Germany and NSF certified for sport, meaning that every single batch is independently tested for purity, for safety, and for label accuracy. There's no artificial sweeteners, no fillers, just science-backed, clinically proven performance in a portable, craveable format. And right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off your first order with promo code THEPROOF. Go to livemomentous.com and use promo code THEPROOF for up to 35% off your first order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code THEPROOF. So if someone's listening and they want more of that in their life, relationships with people that hold them accountable, you're saying it starts with them holding themselves accountable?
I think it's, I don't know if it starts, but it tends to be symmetrical and proportional, right? Like, think about it this way. Like, if you met a person like yourself when you were 24 or whatever, how much patience would you have for that person?
Probably not a lot.
Not a lot, right? And that guy probably wouldn't have a lot of patience for you, like calling him out all the time either, right? So it just kind of like, it kind of ends up that way. This is why, like, we tend to have our closest relationships tend to be reflections, like the emotional maturity of the people around us tends to be a reflection of our emotional maturity ourselves.
To go back to that question you just asked me, I think as a 24-year-old who was being called out, I would have felt attacked and blamed. I don't think that responsibility was there.
Yeah.
Is that the piece that you think holds us back from receiving feedback? Not being responsible?
I think, yeah, defensiveness is definitely part of it. Again, I think it comes back to like, if you're not willing to ask those questions yourself, then you're definitely not going to field them from other people. Like it's unlikely you're going to field them from other people. Like it has to be a very special person or a special situation for you to actually hear it.
And to ask those questions yourself, like for me, it's like these shitty values often. It's so they're providing something, some sort of like quick hit or dopamine, but it's like a slow train wreck happening, right?
Yeah.
So unless something kind of happens quickly that forces you to pause, then it can be like many years down the road.
Right.
Particularly when society, at least when I look back and reflect on it, I feel like society, and this could be an interesting question for you, is does society reinforce shitty values?
It often does. Aspects of society does. I think a lot of marketing and pop culture does, right? Like if you look at like what is marketing in a nutshell, it is poking people's insecurities so that they'll buy something, right? It's like if you're insecure about your body image or your health or how much money you're making or whatever, it's like, hey, I got something for you, you know? And the more insecure I can make you feel, the more likely you are to buy. So the more I think our culture is dominated by marketing messages, it can definitely accentuate a lot of that stuff for sure. I would like to point out too, and maybe this is a bit of a contrarian take to this conversation, but I also believe it's true. I think it's kind of a 20-year-old's job to try out shitty values. Like if you look developmentally, like what you're kind of supposed to be doing in young adulthood, really the big project that developmental psychologists point out, like the big project of adolescence and early adulthood is building an identity, like figuring out who you are, figuring out what matters to you, what you like to do, what you're good at, who are the people you like to be around. And I think that necessitates this kind of natural experimentation. Like you have to just kind of pick things to run towards. And when you're young, you don't have a lot of perspective. So it makes sense that you pick the most obvious things, the shiny objects in front of you. And I think a lot of what maturity is chasing those things, maybe getting a piece of it and realizing how unsatisfying it is. And then going back to the drawing board and being like, okay, like what do I actually care about?
So that's why your earlier comment, you kind of alluded to the fact that you don't necessarily regret any of those shitty values.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely went through a period of a lot of embarrassment and probably a certain degree of shame around my behavior in my 20s.
Was there anything in particular that you were kind of particularly ashamed about?
Well, so here's the thing. It was most of the embarrassment and shame was just like, again, just the misallocation of time and energy. It's just like, man, like if I had my 22-year-old self in front of me, I'd be like, dude, you were like such a talented guy. You could do so much. Like, what are you like? Why are you at the bar on a Tuesday night, drunk again? Like, what are you doing? And it's more about the missed opportunity, the wasting of time, the wasting of energy. The conclusion I wrestled with this for a while, and the conclusion I came to is that really the only regrets that I have are very specific moments where I treated people poorly,
right,
where I was just mean, disrespectful, selfish with people I cared about.
And that hurts.
Yeah.
And it's okay to not feel good about that. At the same time, not kind of sitting in self-pity and letting it define you.
Totally. I would say that's true for all of this, right? Like it's the conclusion I've come to is that this embarrassment towards your younger self, which, by the way, I think is a very common experience. Like, people are embarrassed about different things about their younger selves, but I do think it is natural and in moderation healthy, because that embarrassment is it's this force inside your mind pushing you forward and away from it. It's like reminding you not to go back there. And at least in my case, that's a healthy force.
Right.
Like, I don't want to go back there. So I don't mind harboring a little bit of embarrassment. I think maybe where it becomes unhealthy is if you start internalizing it as shame, as like, I'm a horrible person. I fucked up. There's no way.
And
There's
then
no
it
redemption.
starts to affect how you're showing up right now.
Correct. Yeah.
And I don't think that's that uncommon either.
It's not. Yeah, it's not.
So how do you connect the dots here? And I know I'm taking you back to, what year did you write the Subtle 2016, 17?
It came out in 2016. I wrote it in 2014 and 15.
Okay, so it was a couple of years.
So 10
writing
years.
process. Yeah. Do you remember the moment when you were like, I want to write a book on this? Like, I've got enough substance here, and the kind of, this genre needs this message.
It was much more, this genre needs this message, than it was the book itself. The book was kind of a hodgepodge project over the course of multiple years. And I was blogging at the time, and I had a number of articles that went viral, and they were these very contrarian articles. You know, I had an article called "You Are Not Special," and I had another one called "Happiness is Overrated," and I just had a series of these, and they just consistently blew up and
challenged that whole world.
Yeah. And it's especially back then, like, this is early 2010s. So, you know, we're kind of peak Oprah, peak Eckhart Tolle, like, hey, everybody, like, meditation circle, we're going to heal the world together type stuff. And I was very jaded. I was very, I guess, kind of cynical, skeptical. But I still wanted to improve my life and be happier. And so so very early on, I intuited that, like, this book needs to exist. I don't know exactly what it is or what the title is or what the central core message is, but, like, this book needs to exist in some shape or form. And I would say that over the course of blogging those 2 or 3 years, the themes and the messages, like, really took shape. You know, I was able to kind of market test ideas and see what resonated with people. And then it really wasn't until probably like end of 2015, early 2016 that, like, it cohered into a coherent message.
When you say you were cynical of, I guess, the popularized way to self-growth,
Yeah.
and to being happy,
Yeah.
was that because you tried it on?
Yeah.
And it wasn't working?
Yes. I got very into what I would call, like, conventional self-help as a teenager. And, you know, I read all the Tony Robbins books and started meditating, and, you know, read all the classics, you know, Think and Grow Rich and Power of Positive Thinking and all that. And there was a lot of, I mean, don't get me wrong, there is a lot of utility and, like, good messages in there. But to your point earlier about being an optimist to a fault, thinking positive to a fault, being a little bit self-absorbed and, like, nah, I got it. I know what I'm doing. You know, I think it actually made me a little bit more narcissistic. And so by the time I got to the time I started writing the material that would end up in Subtle Art, you know, I was late 20s. I was kind of coming out of this phase that you and I are talking about. I had realized all the ways that these assumptions had kind of failed me and how dissatisfied I was. I'm like, okay, I set all these goals and I accomplished them, and I'm still kind of lonely and miserable. And I did all these cool things that I was supposed to do, and I'm still kind of lonely and miserable. You know, something's not right here. And at that point too, I had enough relationships fail catastrophically to realize that I was the problem. And
Me too.
It's nature's brutal form of teaching. So it was, in many ways, it was the book I needed to read. And that's always been true with all my books is I write the book that I need to read. And at that moment it was like, okay, enough of this like heal the world shit. Like, can we just talk about not being a miserable fuck? Like, can we just like lower the bar a little bit and be practical and like maybe look at the science a little bit here, because the science has a lot to say, and a lot of it is counterintuitive. So that's essentially what led me there.
What was the kind of key piece that you felt like was missing? And how would you kind of summarize that, I guess, within your philosophy or thesis here?
I would say that the most contrarian piece then, I think it's less contrarian now, it's a little more mainstream now. But back then, the biggest contrarian piece was that you're supposed to feel bad a certain amount of the time. Like, that is just the human condition. These emotions exist for a reason. We just talked about it. Embarrassment exists for a reason. It's so you don't fucking do it again. It's like, that was a mistake. Don't go back there. So we're gonna feel embarrassed so that you remember that, so that you know that into the future. And I got very fed up with kind of this airy-fairy notion of like, hey, if you can just heal all of your childhood wounds, then you're just going to live in bliss and joy and, perfect harmony with the universe and whatnot. And it's like, no, that's not. If you look at our biology, our neurology, our psychology, like, no, we did not evolve to be happy. Happiness is like it's a lever that our biology pulls to make sure that we do certain behaviors.
Right. Build an association.
Yeah. And it's and that's fine. Like, there's no reason to fight that or be upset about it. So for me, the central, I guess, epiphany was, it's okay to feel bad sometimes. You're going to feel bad. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to like waste a part of your 20s. Everybody, I mean, what's the saying? Youth is wasted on the young, right? Like, it's the cliches exist for a reason. But it's just hard to remember that. Like, it's so instinctive for us that when we're in pain, to just be like, how do I get rid of this pain?
And if the entire world is kind of built around a genre that's just celebrating positivity, it can feel like you're the only one going through it.
Yeah.
When the rest of the world on social media and everything just appears perfect.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it portrays an unrealistic standard for people. So
the standard that you wanted to kind of help recalibrate people to, in subtle art, what does it mean to not give a fuck? What does that mean practically?
Practically, not giving a fuck means properly prioritizing the things you care about. And generally speaking, I would say in this day and age, having a properly narrow focus on the things that you care about. So it's not giving a fuck is, in a lot of ways, a bit of a misnomer. Like, you have to give a fuck about something. You have to care about something. Even pretending you don't care about anything it is caring about something. So it is just an innate part of our consciousness that we focus on something, we prioritize one thing over another, therefore we care about it. So the question is like, what are you going to prioritize? What is that value hierarchy that you assemble in your brain? What are you putting first?
Right.
And again, as I talk about in the shitty values section, this isn't a mental exercise. This is your behavior is what tells the truth here. Because I'm sure I would do this too. Like, if you ask me to list out my top 10 priorities from 1 to 10, and then you actually followed me around for a week and saw what I spent my time on, those two things would probably not line up. And really the goal is to just get those things aligned as much as possible. So really what not giving a fuck means is just not wasting time on things that don't matter.
It's not about not caring.
Yeah.
It's just kind of caring differently.
Caring properly.
Better. Yeah. What do you feel is the key ingredient to reframing that and kind of moving past the fear?
Nobody actually cares. That's the thing. Nobody actually cares.
Yeah.
Like in
That's
your
a reality.
head, and again, this is the impression you get at school growing up is the complete opposite, right? It's like if you fail the math test, oh my God, the teachers care, your parents care, or the other kids care. Like it feels cataclysmic. You get in the real world, like nobody fucking cares.
When Dr. Will Bolsowitz and I set up 38 Terra, our goal was ambitious: to build the world's most trusted gut health supplement company. Today we're selling in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States, with the United Kingdom and Canada coming soon. And the truth is, Shopify has made this journey 1,000,000 times easier. It's simple to build and update our site, and with just one Shopify account, we can add different markets for different countries, localizing currency and pricing to improve our customer experience, and importantly, conversion rates. Our single Shopify store also seamlessly plugs into Amazon and multiple warehouses around the world, making it easy to ship efficiently to our customers, no matter where they live. So whether you're just starting out or scaling globally like we are, Shopify gives you the tools to make it happen. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/proof. What would you say are the kind of biggest misconceptions about the book or this idea that you're putting forward were?
One of them I would say is that it's about alleviating anxiety or insecurity. Probably the most common question I get from people after they read the book is they say, how do I stop giving a fuck what other people think? And my response is always, in psychiatry, they have a name for someone who doesn't care what other people think. Do you know what that name is? It's a psychopath. So clearly we want to give a fuck about what other people think. The problem is who you're giving a fuck about and why you're giving a fuck about what they think. Another way to put it is like, don't try to stop caring what other people think about you. Or another way to think about it is don't try to stop comparing yourselves to others. Try to compare yourself to better people for better reasons.
So you think we spend too much time thinking about how we're showing up to people that don't really matter to us?
Yes. So for example, it's another example I use quite a bit. As I say, let's say it's a classic case of like, I have to give a presentation at work and I'm really nervous. And if I mess up, like my coworkers are going to think I'm a loser or stupid or idiot or whatever. Very, like everybody's experienced this to some degree or another. Okay, that's fine. And yes, in a perfect world, you could snap your fingers and suddenly you don't care what your coworkers think. Although I would argue that that's actually not a good thing. You should care what your coworkers think. What I point out to people is I say, the anxiety is not the thing. It's the proportion of the thing. It's like the problem is not that you are worried what your coworkers are going to think about you. It's that you have nothing more important to worry about than what your coworkers think about you. So for example, let's pretend in an imaginary world that your mother has cancer and the only cure is to give this presentation to your coworkers, right? Now, how much do you care what they think about you? You don't care at all. You're like, I just got to do the presentation. Doesn't matter, right? So the issue it's not that something's scary or not scary. It's the prioritization is out of whack. So like people who say like, I give too many fucks what other people think. How do I stop caring what other people think? I say that's not the problem. The problem is you don't have anything more important than what other people think.
You need some better problems.
You need to go find something more important to give a fuck about.
So how would you coach? I mean, you have kids, right?
I do not.
You do not?
Yeah.
Okay. Either do I. Let's just pretend there was a 20-year-old in here and he was kind of finding himself in that position that we've been in.
Yeah.
How would you coach someone to find better problems? Like, where would they start?
Yeah. It's funny. If I was in that situation, I had a 20-year-old in front of me who was of the same mindset that I was in. I don't think I would try to explain. I wouldn't try to convince him to do something different. I would simply ask him why. I would really question his motivations, not in an accusatory way, but in a really like, okay, well, so why do you think getting that money is going to make you happy? Like, what then? What's going to happen next? Okay, then what's that going to get you? Okay, you got the car. So what is that getting you? Okay, interesting. So now people like you. Okay, so what does that get you? Why can't you just get that now without the car? It's ask questions like that, because generally speaking, like people with shitty values, it's the shitty value is like a stand-in for actually an important value that they just don't know how to get to, right? It's like getting all the materialistic stuff. Really what you want is admiration and affection, but you don't know how to get admiration and affection any other way.
Right. Or the way that you learned as a kid.
Yes.
Was by going and doing something and getting congratulated.
Exactly. Or like if you grow up without role models around, or if you grew up in a dysfunctional family environment, right? You don't have the tools to actually go get the affection and admiration in a normal, healthy way. And so you default to, well, if I can get a really nice car, that will solve the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but unless someone's asking you those questions or you're actually pausing, it's difficult to peel those layers back.
Yeah.
And in order to really to answer those questions, you have to be clear on what you want.
Yeah, there needs to be an awareness there. Yeah, I look back at that period and I think it took me many years of like pursuing a bunch of silly stuff to really stop and ask myself, like, what is this for? Like, okay, yeah, I've had like a lot of cool experiences, like went to a lot of cool parties, whatever, got some cool stories. What is this worth? Like, where is this going? And eventually you just realize that it's like not really going anywhere. Like it's temporary. All of it is you're like on this treadmill, and the only way off the treadmill is to pick something a little bit more permanent and internal to care about.
When someone is wanting to get off that treadmill, I know you put forward some values that you suggest that can be helpful to kind of orient ourselves towards. But before we get into kind of what some of those values look like as a bit of a roadmap for people, what are the biggest challenges that we face when we've been behaving a certain way for sometimes decades, and we know we want to change, so the knowing is there and we can intellectualize it.
Yeah.
But what, in your experience, and I'm sure you've got lots of feedback since the book's been out.
Sure.
What are the main things that kind of stand in people's way?
From like living out better values, you mean, or changing behavior?
From changing our behaviors to be more congruent with, with exactly what you just outlined there, where usually that shitty value is like a substitute.
Yeah.
Right? You peel it all back, you work out what your values really are, but changing the behavior is not exactly an easy process.
Yeah. I think the biggest obstacle is that, generally speaking, those substitutes are addiction building behaviors. So whether it's sex, parties, drinking, scrolling, gambling, sports, whatever it is, like generally speaking, they tend to foster some sort of addictive, compulsive aspect to them. And it can be very hard. Food is another big one. It can be very hard to break out of that, because you become emotionally dependent on that substitute, right? So you couldn't get the love and affection and admiration that you always wanted, but when you're in a party and you're drinking, you get some semblance of it. And so you pursue that for years and years and years, and then you get kind of hooked. You start to become emotionally dependent on it. And so it becomes the default behavior and it's hard to break out of it.
What do you feel about the kind of popularized idea of I am enough? I feel like you must have a strong view on this, or perhaps something to say. And maybe I can preface this. I kind of wrestle with that idea in my mind, and because going back when I look at a lot of my behaviors, and they clearly are fueled by me kind of wanting validation and love. Yeah. And then I hear this message of, no, you are enough now as you are. And I wrestle with that because I feel like if I was to truly embody I am enough, I worry that it would affect my kind of drive and ambition and inspiration to get out and want to be better.
Totally. So I was very into Buddhism for a number of years when I was younger. And I used to go meditate and do retreats at a Zen center in Boston. And
how did that happen?
This was when I was in uni. And I guess it was kind of part of the evolution of the self-help personal development stuff. But I got very into it and very curious about it. I also I have ADHD, and meditation was always very good for that. And so I think that kind of started it, but then I got very curious. Like the philosophy behind Buddhism is like super interesting, and I think it's been very influential on me. But I remember I was at a retreat there, and the Zen master just casually said something, and it has stuck with me ever since. He said, "You are perfect just as you are, and you can always be better." And I think there's, in Zen, there's the assumption in Zen is that all truth is paradox, and anything that is not paradox is probably just temporal and impermanent. But I love that, because I think this idea of I'm good enough just as I am is incredibly important from an emotional and mental health perspective, right? You don't want to, I see it as kind of like the piece that is, it's your relationship with your past of okay, the mistakes that I've made, the wrong paths I've taken, the terrible things I've done, none of this stuff makes me irredeemable. None of this is I'm not damaged goods. And I think that belief is very important and very healthy, but I think it is kind of limited to your relationship with your past self. I think the second component is that I can always be better, is the relationship with your future self. And I think you can have both of those relationships at the same time in a way that's healthy.
It's not an either or necessarily. Yeah. Growing up, my dad used to always say to me, "Room for improvement," and I love my dad to bits. But I have to believe that led me to feeling,
like a lot of inadequacy.
Yeah, a lot of inadequacy, and it wasn't ill-intentioned.
No, of course not
at all. But it's just interesting to kind of look back on, and then realize that we can hold those two things at the same time.
Yeah, and I do think it is a balance piece. I don't think it's an either or, right? If you don't have any of the I'm good enough component, you kind of get this self-loathing, compulsive, desperately always trying to do something. But if you only have I'm good enough, then
you're going to be stagnant.
You're just kind of a couch potato who's
You said damaged goods then.
Yeah.
Let's double click on that for a moment. What does that look like in the real world? Damaged goods.
You mean in terms of people perceiving themselves as damaged
goods?
Yeah,
if you were to not have the perspective that you have today.
Yeah.
How would that play out? How would that be affecting your life right now? What would that look like? If you were looking back and sitting, I guess, in shame and judgment, looking back on, and I'm asking this for myself as well.
Yeah, for a friend. I think, generally speaking, people who kind of have this deep sense of lack or shame or damaged goods, or that they're not quite whole or good enough, whatever language you want to put on it. I would describe it as that there is this constant, like, compulsive need to prove something. That's the way I see it manifest, is that there's this constant need to show not just other people, but also themselves, that they're good enough, they're smart enough, they're successful enough, they're loved enough, they have enough attention. And obviously none of those things, you can never have enough of those things. Like, all those things, the more you chase it, the more you want it. And it's, and I would say, like, generally people who are in a good place, shame-wise, they don't feel that need to prove something. Like, it's, like, if you have a healthy relationship with work, you do it because you love it and it feels important, not because you're trying to prove how much money you can make. If you have a healthy relationship, you're with that person because you love them and are happy with them, not because you're trying to prove something to yourself or other people, right? So it's that removal of the need to.
Right. It's a much more peaceful place to live.
Yes.
You wrote about 5 counterintuitive values in subtle art. What is it about those values that make them counterintuitive?
Oh boy.
I've got them listed
me.
so we can I can refresh you, but and we don't have to go into all of them. I do want to go into responsibility.
That's right, the chapters. Okay. Yeah.
I know I brought you on like 9 years after you wrote the book, and I'm expecting you to remember every word.
You can teach it back to me.
Look, all I have to do is set you up, and I know that it's going to come out.
Yeah, it's all down there.
And also, this is a warm up for your conversation with Rich.
With Rich, ironically, Rich will probably be like easier than this because he and I will probably get on some weird tangent about something.
I might sit in on that.
Yeah, so the book is structured, the back half of the book is based on 5 counterintuitive values, like basically things that I think wouldn't obviously strike people as an important value to have, but I argue that they are actually some of the most important values you could have. The first of which is responsibility. I believe very strongly that it's responsibility. Owning what happens in your life is the first step to changing anything, right? Like, as soon as you remove your own responsibility from the things in your life, when you say like, I'm unemployed, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my fault. It's the economy. It's the president. It's the shitty industry that I work in. It's like, as long as it's not your problem, you're never going to feel motivated or empowered to do anything about it.
Right, so zero agency.
So you might as well, like, agency is directly proportional to the amount of responsibility that you assign yourself. And obviously people are afraid of responsibility because it means that there are consequences. Like, it requires that you accept things like failure and rejection and negative feedback from others, and that you own that as well. You can't just own the good things without the bad. Coincidentally, those are the next values that I propose that people have. Is one of them is failure, right? Is actually valuing failure. Most people avoid failure. They hide failure. They pretend like it never happened.
Is that because of the way society, potentially families, celebrate success, and the failures are kind of less sort of unilaterally celebrating the success in many ways?
I think some of it is just the nature of actually, I think a big component of it is the education system, right? Like, you're not, failure is not seen as like the path to success. Whereas when you get into the real life, failure is the path to success. Like, you have to fail at things before you get good at it. So, I think that's a component of it. I do think that some of it could be like familial expectations. I also just think like social, like judging people for their failures is it's an easy out from having to confront or admit our own. So it's the classic Teddy Roosevelt line about like it's easier to stand on the sidelines and be a critic than it is to be the man in the arena.
I mean, you look at the way that we speak about celebrity breakups in the media, and you'd think they're the only ones going through it.
Yeah, it's like
our relationships are perfect.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you took the average reader of the tabloids and checked in on their marriages and relationships, I think it would be a different story. But failure, I mean, it is the key ingredient of learning and growth. Like you can't learn at anything until you fail at it.
What do you feel is the key ingredient to reframing that and kind of moving past the fear?
Nobody actually cares. That's the thing. Nobody actually cares.
Yeah,
like
that's the reality.
And again, this is the impression you get at school growing up is the complete opposite, right? It's like if you fail the math test, oh my God, the teachers care, your parents care, or the other kids care. Like it feels cataclysmic. You get in the real world, like nobody fucking cares. Nobody does.
That comes back to what you said earlier about you're not special.
Yeah.
If I'm so consumed by the fact that if I fail, everyone's going to focus on me, then I'm really just consumed in myself.
Totally. There's something about the constant fear of judgment from others that creates a sense of narcissism and self-absorption in yourself for the reason you just said, that if you're constantly obsessing over what other people think about you, you are subtly making the assumption that they actually are thinking about you when the vast majority of the time they're not.
On the first one that you threw out there, responsibility, where do you think we have most trouble with this? I have to think a lot of the time we're conflating it with being at fault.
Yeah,
blaming.
Fault and blame. Yeah, where people get really up in arms about this is around areas of actual victimization. So I've gotten plenty of angry emails and angry quotes and magazines and newspapers of people saying like, well, what about so-and-so? What about people who have been, victims of crimes and abuse and all this stuff? And the problem is that people conflate responsibility with fault or responsibility with blame. For example, let's say somebody breaks into my house tonight and robs me and, I don't know, assaults me, puts me in the hospital. It's not my fault that I got robbed and I got assaulted, but it's still my responsibility to deal with it, to deal with the consequences and the repercussions. I need to deal with the police. I need to deal with the hospital. I need to heal. It's responsibility is, again, it's the fault is very much a relationship with the past. It's like, who's to blame for this? Who caused this problem? Responsibility is a relationship with the future. It's like, well, I don't know who caused this problem, but I'm going to deal with it. And when you take on radical responsibility, you're basically constantly deciding that I am going to own my future.
Right.
I'm going to own my decisions, my choices. And like, even if it's not your fault, what happens to you, you still have a choice of how to respond to that, what happened to you. You still have a choice in your attitude or the lessons you take or the decisions you make going forward. And in each of those choices is a responsibility.
It's funny as well, looking back, not to make this episode about me.
I mean, your name's on the cover, so.
It's just funny sometimes, like, a few years back, I went through a breakup and a pretty bad one, and I was pretty hurt. She was hurt, and we don't need to go into the details. But, in the acute stages there, I was like very much living in the victim blaming space. And to tie this back, I guess, to what we were saying about having friends around that are accountable. And I am really grateful I have great friends. Some of my friends I think their way of showing up was just to be in my corner and just kind of, reinforce that I wasn't at fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. And then I did have some other friends who were, Rich being one of them, was like, you might want to look at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just an amazing experience to go through, to feel that shift of blaming, and it's out of your control when you're in that space.
Yeah.
To no, hang on, okay, she's done this, she's done that, whatever it is. Where have I been responsible? And there were so many different ways, and it's not to like excuse anything or to say that certain behaviors didn't hurt, because they did.
Yeah.
But as I was able to kind of double click and look at things and see the ways in which my behaviors were responsible for the results that I was getting, I felt a lot more control over my life.
The responsibility piece is like very proportional to the acknowledgement of choice and everything. I actually had this conversation with someone in my life recently. Similarly, she just got out of a relationship. Her ex was awful. Like, just the stories that she was telling me were absolutely awful. And genuinely, like, she was, I mean, I'm sure she's not perfect, but like, this guy was a real piece of shit. And after a certain amount of conversation and after knowing her for a while, I just gently broached the question, why did you choose to stay in this relationship for so long? Right? Like, there were signs repeatedly. Like, this was not news to you that this person was this way. Like, you were still choosing to be there, and you were still choosing to tolerate a certain amount of it, and choosing to try to change him, and choosing to believe that things would get better. Like, and again, not blaming you, but just pointing out that, like, you were making choices along the way, and what can you learn from those choices? Like, how do you know that you're not going to repeat this pattern in the future? And until you admit that you were making choices along the way, you can't learn from it.
Yeah, that's an important thing. I mean, that's a bit of an indicator if you're just repeating the same patterns over and over and over and getting the same result.
Yeah.
And they're not the results you want. Are you being responsible?
Yeah. Are you owning your choices in the matter? Yeah.
You also put embracing uncertainty on that list.
Yes.
And you said certainty is the enemy of growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like trying to, you can't convince anybody of anything if they believe they already know everything, right? It's the admission that maybe I don't know what I'm doing that it opens up the path to potentially finding something better. I think a lot of this is the uncertainty piece it's almost code for humility. I think inherently certainty brings a certain kind of arrogance with it. Because it means you're not open to other opinions or ideas or perspectives.
So this shows up for people as I'm right. Is that
would be the most common way? It's like, I'm right. I know what I'm doing. Like, I get it. You don't understand. That's another big one. You don't understand. You don't see what I see. Well, yeah, but they also might see something you don't see.
As the years go on, though, you realize how much you didn't know.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it comes back to, like, you watch your wisdom is just watching all of your past assumptions fail you.
So how does that value of embracing uncertainty today for Mark, like, what does that look like?
What does it look like?
Yeah.
It's funny. So the way I think about it is that I don't know anything for sure, but I have varying levels of conviction. And so if you hang out with me a lot, undoubtedly you will often hear me say, I'm low conviction on this, but this is what I think. Or I'm high conviction on this, but this is what I think. And I'm basically signaling to the person I'm talking to, I'm open to being wrong, but here's where my confidence level is.
And you still have an opinion.
And I still have an opinion, right? And so things that I do have a lot of experience around and a lot of expertise around, I will tell people like, hey, I'm very high conviction on this, but I'm open to arguments. Whereas in a lot of cases, like my wife and I, we've been talking recently about buying a house. And I mean, there's just like so many big questions around a purchase like that. And so many times in that conversation, I will give her an opinion. And I'm like, low conviction opinion, but I don't think we should do this. And here's why. And it's just, it's a way to let her know of like, this is my opinion, but I'm very convincible otherwise, right?
I could change my mind.
Yeah. So I'm open. Debates are open. Feel free to argue.
Yeah. And I mean, that provides a kind of nice foundation to have a conversation from.
Yeah. And it allows the other person to feel like they're going to be heard. Because I think the problem with certainty is that, generally speaking, the more certain we are of something, the more we like kind of cling or grasp to a belief, the more it's protecting or hiding an insecurity or some shame. And because if there was no insecurity there, then why would you need to cling to that belief so strongly?
Yeah, I like that you're still wanting to have an opinion. Because the other end of that spectrum is just never having an opinion on anything.
Yeah, which is also useless.
Right. And this uncertainty piece ties in nicely, actually. I mean, you'd make a great scientist.
Yeah.
With that kind of approach.
Yeah.
Obviously, humility and being open-minded is a very important part of being a good scientist. So that comes up on this show quite a lot.
Well, I talk about, it's funny because this was a piece, I think it's in my second book. I had a little section about this. And it was funny because it was one of those things that I got very excited about. And then like, I think readers just kind of glossed over. But I really do think personal growth, like I think we should approach personal growth as one approaches science, which is all of your beliefs are hypotheses of like what makes a good life and what doesn't. All of your actions are the experiments. And then your emotions are the data, right? So it's like, I believe coming on this podcast is a good thing to do. It's the right thing to do, right? That's my hypothesis. Coming here and doing it and seeing what happens is the experiment. And then the emotions during and after and, once the episode goes up and seeing the feedback and everything like that becomes the data, right? And so it's like you can just run your life that way.
How's the data feeling right now?
Oh, it's pretty good. Inconclusive. Sample size is small. Okay. No, it's good. Good so far.
Noted. Is there anything else that because you just mentioned then that you feel like that in your second book maybe it wasn't fully appreciated?
Yeah.
And we're kind of digressing a little bit, but I'll bring us back.
Sure.
But is there anything in subtle art, which at this point, tens of millions of copies?
Yeah, like 20 million or something.
Like 20 million.
Yeah.
This is a small number. Are there any kind of key messages in that book that you feel were not fully appreciated or didn't land?
I don't, nothing's coming to mind immediately. I do think people over-index on the not giving a fuck thing a little bit. Like it's...
Well, as in it becomes like I'm too cool to give a fuck about anything?
Yes. Let me just put it this way. It's always clear to me who didn't get past the first 2 chapters and who actually read the entire book because the conversations are completely different. But yeah, I mean, I would say that is probably the chief frustration with that book is, like if I do an interview and then it's like, so Mark, why shouldn't we give a fuck? And I'm like, oh, okay, clearly you didn't finish the book.
Yeah. It was a provocative title that could be misinterpreted if you don't.
I always thought of it as like a Trojan horse because really it's a book about values and it's a book about thinking about your values and what is a good value and what should you care about and the not giving a fuck is just like it's just a way to sneak those conversations into your brain.
And what does the word subtle bring to that? to not giving a fuck.
Subtle is the most important part of it. Yeah.
I feel like that's the bit that people might be missing.
Because it's not obvious, right? Like that's the thing, is when you actually do start getting into all this stuff, it's really hard to know what to give a fuck about. It's actually a very difficult question. And I think everybody struggles with it quite a bit. Like, you should care what your coworkers think about you. The question is how much? And like, that's a very hard question. Right? The answer is not 0, but also the answer is you shouldn't have a panic attack every time you have to give a presentation. So like, but where in the middle should you land? And that it is a subtle question. It is difficult.
You know, other than overtly having a panic attack, which I think would be pretty obvious.
Yep.
You're over-indexing on how much you care about what these colleagues of yours think. Like, what else would be showing up for someone that would be a sign that you're caring too much here?
I mean, I would say, you know, if you're like losing sleep about it, if you're obsessively asking people for, you know, again, it comes back to that proving piece, right? It's like if you're constantly asking for your colleagues' approval, or like, hey, did I do a good job? Like, what do you think? Like, do you think this is good? If you're constantly needing validation, that's usually the signal. But it's funny too, because this is the other subtle piece, and the other reason this subject is so hard is that it's also deeply personal. Like some people, their work life matters way more than other people. Some people, they work in an industry where it's like if you're an actor and you have an audition, like, yeah, okay, maybe you should lose a little bit of sleep over that audition, like if it's a huge opportunity for you. So like it's hard to, there's no one size fits all model. And I think this is why it's really funny, actually. So when I submitted the first draft of the book to my publisher, one of the pieces of feedback that they gave, and this was pretty standard back then, it's less standard now, but it was standard back then that all self-help books finish a chapter with like a quiz or an exercise or a summary of like, here are the bullet points and here are the 3 things you can do to like go try this out or whatever. And so the publisher gave feedback of like, hey, it'd be great to have like a quiz or exercises at the end of the chapters. And I was like, absolutely fucking not. Like that.
High conviction.
Yeah. I told him, I was like, the whole point of this book is that I don't have the answers. Like you have to go figure this out on your own. Like nobody can tell you this stuff. Nobody can tell you how much you should value your career. Like only you can decide that. So it's the idea was to give people the ammunition of like the proper questions to ask themselves and to think about, and then they go think about it.
Come back to these 5 counterintuitive values. You mentioned approval there. Is the kind of antidote to that, is that the acceptance of rejection?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
I think it's just being okay with the fact that not everybody's going to like you, nor should everybody like you. Being liked by everybody is kind of similar to not having any opinions. It's probably pleasant, but it's not meaningful or useful in any way. I think it's ultimately, to care about something, you have to be willing to be disliked for it. And that's actually a question I ask at people at a lot of live events. It's like, what are you willing to be disliked for? And if you can't answer that easily, then like that's a sign that you're one of those people that like the reason you care about so much,
playing it safe.
Yeah, you care so much about what other people think because there's nothing more important than that. So it's like if you have nothing more important than that, then of course you're just going to live and die by everybody's approval.
Right. Right. What you have to say is less important than getting their approval.
Yeah. I think it's important for everybody to find something in their life that they're willing to be disliked for.
Yeah, it's an easy trap, people pleasing, to fall into.
Yeah. Yeah. It's another, I would argue it's another form of addiction.
Because in many respects, it's a kind of comfortable, easy route.
And it's short-term, quick fixes. You know, it's like, it's always being the person who's always agreeing, always being available, always helping, always reassuring, always, you know, it's you get those quick short-term hits of yes, I'm liked, I'm needed, but you're not building anything meaningful.
If you peel that back another layer, if I'm disagreeable, if I'm standing for something and you don't like me, I'm fearing that. I'm scared of that. I don't like that idea because what does that say about me? Is that fundamentally why we avoid this? If you don't like me, what does that say about me?
Right. Well, I think generally the people who are unable to tolerate other people not liking them are people who don't like themselves.
Ooh. Say that again.
If you cannot tolerate other people not liking you, it's likely because you do not like yourself, right? Because if you liked yourself, you would be okay with somebody else not liking you. But if you don't like yourself, then you are completely emotionally dependent on other people liking you at all times. I think that's the fundamental issue. The irony here too is that if you are willing to be disliked for something, like let's say you stand up and you are disagreeable and you're like, no, this is what I think. And I disagree with you. I think you're wrong. Something interesting happens, which is that people trust you. Because it's like, okay, you just risked being disliked to say something. It means that now when you say something nice, I know it's true because I know you're capable and willing to say something.
Right. It's like an honesty filter.
Yeah. I use a silly example in the book, but it's actually totally true. And, and my wife actually admits this now. But when I started dating my wife, she would do the classic thing that women tend to do, which is, she'd get all dressed up, put on her outfit, and then she'd come out and she'd be like, how do I look? And I decided at some point that I was just always going to be honest in my relationships. And that included when she came out and I didn't think she looked very good. I told her.
Brave man.
Let's just say it didn't go well. The first half dozen times, it didn't go well. But it's funny because, she'd get mad. She'd think I was a dick and whatever. But it's funny because now if she puts on an outfit, gets all dressed up, and she comes out and she says, how do I look? And I say, oh my God, you are absolutely gorgeous. She knows I'm being real.
It carries more weight.
That it means something, that I'm being honest. She knows that she looks amazing. And it's a superficial example, but I think that's something that's true. That's true across relationships.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have employees in my company who I know they won't say no to me. So their yeses don't mean a whole lot. Like if I have an idea and I run it by a bunch of people on my team, there are certain people that it's like if they say, oh, great idea, Mark, that's awesome. Like it carries basically no weight because they've never said no to me before.
Right. That also brings us full circle back to where we started talking about friends and being able to call your friends out on their bullshit.
Yes.
My friends who call me out on my bullshit, I think because they do that, I really deeply trust everything that they say.
Yeah.
Even when they do say they're proud or give me a pat on the back for something.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a level of respect too, right? Because it's now they're with you for the right reasons. They're not there to get something from you, right? It's like if they're willing to call you on your bullshit and maybe have an argument with you, fight with you about something, and then they still show up the next day and they're supportive and they're there for you. Like now it's real. And I think that's the thing that people pleasers miss is that they are undermining their own ability to be respected by others. Like that's why people pleasers get walked over.
It's an inauthenticity. Contemplating mortality.
I mean,
is this a gratitude piece?
Part of it, yeah. This comes from Stoicism, and a big piece of it is, I think, a side effect of it is gratitude. It is like you really become grateful for the things that you have when you contemplate having nothing. but it's funny. Like, I truly believe at the core of this values question, at the core of knowing what to give a fuck about and what not to give a fuck about, at the root of it is it's a question of time. You have a limited amount of time, and you have potentially infinite possibilities of what you could do with your life. So how do you narrow those possibilities and allot the time appropriately? And you can really only be realistic about that when you think about your own death. When you think about, like, okay, I'm hitting my 40s. I'm about halfway there. I'm probably halfway through my career at this point. You know, it should shape and color the things that you prioritize and the things that you think about. I think one of the reasons why young people are maybe pursue frivolous things and waste a lot of time is because they're blissfully ignorant of their own mortality. They just think they have an infinite amount of time. Like, just life seems so long to them. And I've had this experience recently of, you know, hitting my 40s and having this realization of, like, my God, 20 years goes by fast, real fast. And the amount of stuff that I thought I was going to accomplish by now, like, things, it's so much harder to achieve things than I thought it was. And it takes so much more effort and energy, and it takes so much longer than I thought to become excellent at something or to really build something meaningful. It makes me really value my time a lot more.
I think sometimes when people think about our impermanence, something I've had friends say to me is, you know, even in 1,000 years from now, like, people won't be speaking about the most well-known person today.
Yeah.
Maybe their work will affect other work or whatnot, but there's an element of insignificance to our existence. And then it's kind of being able to sit, hold that, realize that as a reality, but then still find significance and meaning in our life, which is obviously a very deep kind of thought or question to throw out.
Yeah. That zooming out that you describe, it's another Stoic practice of just trying to get as big of an you know, think about yourself on a 1,000-year timeline, right? Like, it's basically nothing's going to matter, right? And if you zoom out, say, to 100 years, I mean, when you just do that thought exercise, like, almost everything in your life kind of bleeds away. You know, when I do it, I don't know about you, but when I do it, it really, pretty much everything kind of melts away, other than a handful of relationships and maybe like one or two things I'm working on. And, like, that's it. I'm not even saying those things are going to last 100 years. I'm just saying that, like, when I think about what's going to matter to me over the course of an entire lifetime, let's say I live to 100, that's probably it. And so, but then if you sit and think about all the stuff you spend time doing, that's not those handful of relationships or those one or two things you're working on, like, it's the majority of your time.
Yeah, I can see how it's a nice way to reorient yourself towards the problems that matter, as you put it.
Yeah.
To kind of close this out, what would you say to the person who's thinking, great, here's a plan to alleviate my problems?
Wait, there's a plan?
Here's a plan. Well, okay. I mean, that's a good point. That's a good point. Here's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
Not a plan.
Yeah.
So let's underscore that. Here's a way of thinking that could alleviate my problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are so programmed, both by nature and nurture, to think in terms of benefits, think in terms of successes, right? Like, what are the cool things I want in my life? It's very counterintuitive and unnatural for us to think in terms of problems or trade-offs. And I really see the role of my work of just trying to train people to mentally think in those terms of, like, No, you're not going to get rid of your problems, but you can get better problems. You can find a better version of that problem, and that's really what growth is just finding better versions of your current problems. Another way of thinking about it is just finding better trade-offs. So like we did on my podcast, we did this like massive 5-hour values episode, and we just took all the research and just went like super deep on everything. And it's funny because even so, like the kind of the godfather of values research is this researcher named Shalom Schwartz, and he spent his entire career building these frameworks and trying to understand how all this stuff works in our brain. And at the end of the day, he was able to narrow down kind of all human values into 10 different categories. But the conclusion he came to is that within those categories, you can't have them all. You essentially, each individual, the thing that makes you, you, and me, is that I've chosen to pursue these 4 or 5 categories, and I'm willing to sacrifice the others. And maybe you're willing to choose to pursue these other 5 categories, and you sacrifice the others. Like there's inherent trade-offs in all of them. You can't have them all simultaneously. Like they are inherently contradictory to some extent,
Gotcha.
right? Like you can't make your relationships and your family the top priority of your life and your career the top priority of your life. Like one inherently interferes with the other. And so you have to decide, what are you more willing to compromise, family or career? And most people just don't. That's such an unpleasant question to sit with. And so most people just find ways to not sit with it. But including a whole self-help industry, which will tell you that you can have both family and career as much as you want. And but at the end of the day, the real question is not what benefits do you want to get? It's what are you willing to give up?
Beautiful. What are you working on now? Is there a, we fast forward 9 years since that book, and you've had a couple other books come out. Is there a new kind of message that you feel like the world needs at the moment?
I do feel like I'm not working on a book at the moment, but I'm thinking about the next book, and it's actually interesting coming back to this conversation. Like I haven't had an interview around the subtle art content in a while, and it's interesting coming back because a lot of the stuff that I'm thinking about, I think is maybe a more philosophical, I don't want to call it more adult or more mature, because that's kind of like condescending to my prior self or to a book that millions of people love. But it is, I do feel like I have some more clarity around these ideas than I did 10 years ago, and a little bit more depth and maybe lived experience, lived pain around some of these ideas that I didn't have at 30, 32. So I do think, the next book will probably be something around a lot of these questions of values, mortality, time. Time just, it feels to me like everything comes back to time. It's just like understanding, especially in this day and age where we have so many places to waste time, more than ever before. I mean, it used to be, not to sound like an old man, but like, I'm old enough to remember when I was a kid, the biggest problem was like figuring out how to spend your time. Like you were bored a large percentage of the time.
You were born in the 80s, right? Yeah, we were born in the same decade.
So you probably remember too. Like when you were a kid, there were just long stretches of boredom of like not knowing how to spend time. And I think pretty much all of human history up until 15 years ago, that was the case. 20 years ago, maybe.
Do you think that boredom's important?
I do. It's funny. I have some ideas of writing maybe even pieces or chapters around boredom, how boredom is underrated or important. The problem is nobody wants to read a book about boredom. Nobody wants to be told.
Sounds hard.
That they should be bored. So it's like either you need to find another Trojan horse.
Yeah.
But I do think there's probably something useful in boredom, and there's like a lost art to it a little bit.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I was able to twist your arm to come back and talk about a book that you wrote a decade ago.
It's my pleasure.
Never
man.
too late.
My pleasure.
Yeah, come back and speak to me about Boredom sometime.
Cool. Sounds good.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
There you have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and want to stay up to date with future episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Apple or Spotify. Finally, thank you for showing up and the effort that you're making to take control of your health. I look forward to hanging out with you again in the next episode.